You gotta pay the troll toll. If you wanna get into that boy's hole, you gotta pay the troll toll to get in. You want the baby boy's hole, you gotta pay the troll toll. You gotta pay the troll toll to get in. Troll toll. What'd you say? Troll toll. Hey, hey, hey. Troll toll. Here's your toll, troll.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my full series review for Berserk. Berserk is a dark fantasy action manga written and illustrated by the late Kentaro Miura, and it was serialized in Young Animal from 1989 to 2021. Of course, this review comes off the horribly tragic news that Kentaro Miura passed away in early May of this year. It was a huge shock to the entire community, and we really still haven't recovered from it, but I felt the best thing that I can do to pay respect to this guy's legacy would be to take a look at his most famous work. Now, as I review this, I'm not going to be letting his passing affect my opinion on the series. However, I will not be docking points due to the fact that it was unfinished, and I mean, spoiler alert, it's really good anyway, so... Berserk takes place in the medieval fantasy setting of Midland, a world ruled by kingdoms and kings and empires, and you got all the horrible staples of the settings. You got the plague, you got the rape, and you got little pesky fairies going around causing mischief. The story follows Guts, a mysterious black swordsman. He's kind of a dick, but he is obscenely strong and carries around a massive inhuman sword. He is on the hunt for apostles, these demonic creatures who are always up to no good, in the hopes of tracking down someone who, let's just say, wronged him in the past. Yes, he is after Griffith, a man who he used to call his best friend. Many years ago, they were commanders of the Band of the Hawk, a famous mercenary band who could always get the job done. But something bad happened. Something real bad happened. Like, I'd probably get demonetized if I even mentioned what happened. And now Guts is alone and hates Griffith. So yeah. And while we don't understand why at first, we have a feeling it might have something to do with the fact that every time the sun sets, an endless shitload of demons come out of the ground and try to murder Guts. That is why every night since his parting with Griffith, he has had to fight them off. This is his life. He wanders from place to place looking for answers and kicks ass every night. And you're just left thinking, why? Why are things like this? Why does everything suck? And why is everything so off about this world? Why are there suddenly trolls in the woods? Why are there fairies everywhere? It almost feels like this world is overlapping with another. What's up with that? Well, you are going to get answers to most of these things. After a short introduction arc, we are swept away into the Golden Age. A complete backstory of Guts from his birth up to now, where we learn what the fuck happened to him. And from there, we pick it back up and see him as he continues along his journey, meets a lot of people along the way, learns new things about the world and himself, and continuously tries to cope with the trauma of his past. Yay, fun action manga. Now, Berserk is a big series to tackle. It's of course very long, but the story itself is... oh man, the scope is just crazy. This is a very epic series in every sense of the word. I think the introduction, while in retrospect is definitely the weakest part of the story, it does a really good job setting up the mystery, giving you an idea of what you're in for, and things really start to pick up once you get into the Golden Age. Of course, this is the most famous part of Berserk. It's been adapted into an anime twice, and for good reason, because it's pretty fucking incredible. This is where we follow Guts from his literal birth to where he is at the start of the series. He's been an outcast his whole life, people fucking hate him, he's gone through some horrible traumas, and then suddenly he joins the Band of the Hawk, a mercenary group led by Griffith, who really start to open his eyes that not everything about this world is awful. He starts to open up to people and becomes, a little less of a dick. Of course, all the while, some, monumental historical conflicts are going on. There's this whole 100-year war thing, which, the Band of the Hawk gets recruited into. They participate in a bunch of tactical battles. There's a whole bunch of political scheming and corruption going on. And there's monsters, man. What the fuck is going on to this? Well, why are there monsters everywhere all of a sudden? It's such an interesting and expertly written story. It's gripping from start to finish. It is really one of the best pieces of manga I have ever read. it deserves pretty much all of the praise it gets. And of course, it all culminates in the climax that is indescribable. One of the most famous moments in manga history, fuck, man. Yes, I should say Berserk is not a series for everyone. As you know, as much as it gets praised, not everyone's gonna like just how dark and fucked up this story is. Midland is a horrible place. There is constant gratuitous violence, physical and sexual. A lot of parts of the series, as well told as they may be, just aren't really fun to read. You're just like, oh Jesus, what the fuck? And while I do think they sometimes take it a bit too far, without most of this stuff, the series would not feel as impactful. It's just something you should be aware of going in. Berserk is, yeah, it's some NC-17 shit. So that's only like a quarter of the series. What the fuck happens in the rest of it? This is when we pick back up to the present day, and we continue to follow Guts on his journey. Off the bat, we see a really weird shift that kind of caught me off guard when I first read it. It makes more sense now, but it was still a bit surprising as Berserk transitions from what was pretty much like a war political thriller with fantasy elements to a straight up high fantasy swashbuckling adventure story. While the series still has its horrific moments, especially like right after the Golden Age, as it goes on the tone becomes significantly lighter. We see a gleam of hope in a lot more characters' eyes, and while most of this, if I'm being honest, is not nearly as interesting as the story of the Golden Age, we are still treated to a really fun time. Guts meets a whole bunch of new people. He forms like a Final Fantasy-esque party. They all have their special abilities and powers and hopes and dreams. And they all have one final destination in mind. Getting there won't be easy, however, as they have to fight a lot of trolls, a lot of, ghost pirates. Yeah, there are parts of this section of Berserk that, while I enjoyed, they were kind of just like, alright, I'm much more interested in other stuff happening in this world. I don't really care to see like all of this troll fighting. I mean, they're fucking ugly, smelly trolls. I don't really care. Thankfully, though, there is still a lot of really interesting stuff woven throughout this part of Berserk that really keeps me interested. Whenever we do cut back to like the wars and political turmoil of this world, I find those to be, some of the best parts of the series, and they continue to be very fantastic. And even as the stuff with Guts' journey continued, it led to some really incredible payoffs and great moments that really made all the parts that I was a bit indifferent on all the more worth it. Let's talk about comedy. When people first read Berserk, after hearing so many things about it, they might be a bit surprised to discover that it is kind of a hilarious manga. Yeah, you see there's Puck, and now Puck is in the story from chapter 1, but he kind of gets forgotten as we move into the Golden Age, which has a very dark tone. Horrible things are constantly happening. So when Puck returns into the story, he kind of hits you like a truck. Puck, of course, Guts' elf companion, who is a goofball. He is actually fucking ridiculous. He is wild. He has a wide arsenal of fourth wall breaking movie references and costumes. There are some people who don't like, post Golden Age because of, the constant comic relief. But I like it most of the time. Puck jokes early on about how the series would be too dark without him, and I kind of agree. I would get pretty depressed reading some of this stuff if Puck wasn't right around the corner to cheer me up. That being said, however, there are definitely times where I feel like it goes a bit too overboard. A lot of these moments later on, of course, where they're fighting trolls and ghost pirates and sea monsters and shit, I feel like a lot of these moments would be better and feel more suspenseful if Puck wasn't making a joke on literally every page. I love the little devil, but yeah, might take it a bit too far sometimes. I'm all for comic relief and dark series, but you really need to strike a good balance. And there are moments where Berserk really nails that balance, but there are some times where I think Puck could have sat a chapter or two out. And then, of course, we get to the ending of Berserk, which unfortunately never really happened. Yes, Berserk is an incomplete series, and it didn't really end at the best time, in that there was still a lot that needed to happen, probably at least 10 more volumes. So many plot points are tragically left unfinished, and the final chapter does end on a pretty sizable cliffhanger, which was pretty heartbreaking to read. But what's probably most bittersweet about this ending is that I actually think, and I did not think in a million years I would think this when I got here, but I actually think the last few volumes of Berserk are the best volumes of Berserk. This is when the politics side of Berserk is reintroduced full force, and some of the stuff we get here is absolutely phenomenal. It's also when Guts' journey reaches its climax. And while there was still a lot that still needed to happen, we do get some satisfying conclusions to arcs that had been going on for years and years. So, you know, while it's always sad when a series goes unfinished, I do think there were worse places that it could have ended. So when I got to the end, I was at least thankful that it happened. Let's discuss those characters for a bit. Berserk is a huge series. It has a shitload of characters. Most of them, believe it or not, are fucking phenomenal. Guts is such a good character. Holy fuck. When he is first introduced, though, he is not very likable. He's an asshole. But once we delve into his past, learn more about him, we realize why he is such an asshole. And you start to understand him a lot more. So when the wheels of character development start spinning, and he starts, you know, changing his ways a bit, starts opening up to people, it's really, really fascinating to see. He is constantly dealing with the ghosts of his past and running into new challenges that he needs to overcome. From start to finish, his character is probably the most consistently amazing thing about this series. Then you have Griffith, who serves as the main antagonist, which, not a spoiler because you find out right away. This is a man who has a goal, and he will stop at nothing to achieve that goal. He will stop at nothing. He is such a fucking evil motherfucker. He's scheming and diabolical, and he's so fun to watch. Every moment with Griffith in this series is just gold, man. He's just as good a character as Guts, even if we don't see him as much. Casca is another fantastic character. She is a female commander within the Band of the Hawk who has a deep admiration for Griffith, you know, during the flashback at that time, and also grows very close to Guts. And his relationship with her is really when he starts, you know, finally opening up to people, and it's so great, man. And throughout the series, as more things happen, I don't usually cry while reading stuff, but if there was a point in Berserk that would make me cry, it's a moment that involves these two. And then there are just so many great side characters. The rest of the Band of the Hawk make for some excellent banter, just a great supporting cast. And of course, in the second half of the series with Guts' Final Fantasy parody, a lot of great characters there. Two of his companions, Farnese and Serpico, both have a very complicated history together and make for excellent additions, especially Farnese. Her whole story is so unique and fascinating. She realizes that how she lived most of her life is wrong, and, you know, really hopes to redeem herself in some way. They meet Shirka, who is a young witch girl who helps them along their journey, starts to teach them about magic, gives all these other characters ways of fighting against these monsters that are constantly trying to attack them. And she's also very integral in the later parts of the series with how Guts is able to keep up fighting all of these superhuman monsters. Then, of course, the comic relief bunch. Like I said, they're cool and all, sometimes a bit overboard, but I love them. I can't help it, man. In the final chapter of Berserk, Puck makes like 5 references to the Star Wars prequels. I have nothing bad. How can you hate that? That's so fucking incredible. The one area I think Berserk isn't as strong is with its villains. Not its main villain, of course. Griffith is fucking amazing. Also, Nosferatu Zod. We don't know much about this guy, but he is super intimidating, and every time he shows up, it is an absolute treat. To combat him, you have the Skull Knight, who is another very mysterious character who shows up at certain times to help Guts and his friends. Also, really love to see him, and I am thankful that right before Berserk ended, we got to learn a bit more about his character. But it is the side villains that I find to be a bit lacking, like the captain of the ghost pirates, the crazy priest guy, the guy who's like made out of fire or something. This isn't really a deal breaker because they're usually only villains for a small portion of the series, and of course you always still have Griffith, but all of these guys feel a bit more like roadblocks. It's really entertaining to, you know, watch them do their thing and watch Guts fight them, but at the end of the day, I'm not really going to remember these guys when I think about this series. Whatever, overall, everyone else is pretty consistently amazing. Also, shout out to the boys Pick, Pock, Peck, and Pack. So the art in Berserk is indescribable. It is orgasmic. It is euphoric. Yeah. When Berserk starts off, it's a very good-looking manga. Mira is kind of a prodigy. Ever since he was very young, he was drawing some really fantastic stuff. And right off the bat, Berserk is great. It has a really dark and gritty art style. Guts is swinging around his heavy sword, and there's so much weight to it. All the blood and guts and shit looks disgusting, but that just adds to the impact of the series. As it goes on, though, Berserk kind of transcends reality, and we are subjected to some of the best, if not the best, manga art I have ever seen. It's not just in the character designs, but in the world. This is a remarkably tragic and breathtaking world. As more fantasy elements get added into the series, we are subjected to some insanely creative creature designs, some different location designs, some stuff that truly made my jaw drop. And it just becomes more and more consistent throughout. Like, in the final chapters, even though Miura's health wasn't nearly as good as it used to be, this is when we get some of the absolute best art in Berserk. I was reading these final chapters, and like, every single page is jaw-dropping. It is incredible. Even with long breaks and, you know, Miura having ample time to create these chapters, it was just so mind-blowing, and I don't know if I will ever see anything like this again. Lots of mangaka are experts at drawing characters, but like high fantasy stuff on this scale, you just really don't see. I think sometimes the immense detail of the art can kind of work against it during heavy action sequences when there's a lot of shit going on. Like when Guts is, you know, spinning around and doing his thing, I sometimes felt myself getting a bit lost in all of the detail of everything. It just felt a little busy. I wouldn't put this up there with, you know, the best flowing choreographed action scenes I've read in manga, but 99% of the time it looks so fucking good and it's really hard to complain. So those were my thoughts on Berserk. Yeah, man, I don't know what to say. I already made a whole video, you know, just discussing how I felt about Miura's passing, how devastated I was, because Berserk is really something that is much more than just a simple series. You know, this has been around for over 30 years. It has inspired countless other works of fiction, be it they movies, video games, novels, and of course other manga. There's so much stuff we wouldn't have without Berserk. And I think the series is a 9 out of 10. I don't think it is as perfect as some people claim it to be, but I cannot deny how monumental and important it is. And I mean, a 9 out of 10 is still fucking amazing. This series is so good. If you're interested in checking it out, which I highly recommend, don't let the fact that it's not going to have an ending sway you at all. It's definitely something that should be experienced to the last page, and you can get all 40 volumes from Dark Horse. I do imagine we will eventually get a 41st volume, because there were some, you know, chapters that haven't been put into a volume yet. It might be a shorter one, but they can definitely do it, and I hope they do, so, you know, people can own the full series. There are also the 3-in-1 hardcover deluxe editions from Dark Horse, which are a bit on the expensive side, but so are the singles, and the hardcovers are absolutely the best way to experience the series. The quality of those is ungodly amazing, and I cannot even imagine what some of the later volumes would look like on those massive ass high quality pages. They made some adaptations of Berserk too. The Golden Age adaptations are fine. It's an incredible arc, but, you know, they do cut things, sometimes the animation isn't great, you know, good stuff, but I wouldn't recommend it as someone's first Berserk experience. And then, of course, the 2016-2017 anime is infamously one of the worst looking and sounding shows ever produced.
That's how familiar my fated foe.
For alternate recommendations if you like Berserk, of course, Vinland Saga. This is another series that, while it is far more realistic and grounded than Berserk, it is very similar in that it has a main character who undergoes some incredible development. There's a lot of intriguing politics and war and adventure stuff. It's very similar to Berserk in a lot of ways, and, you know, definitely one of my favorite series ever. This one might seem a bit out of nowhere, though. I would also recommend Magi, The Labyrinth of Magic. Obviously, a much lighter tone than Berserk, but it also deals with a lot of similar subjects, with its politics and its wars and its characters having great development. There's a lot of great humor here, a lot of great art. You know, it's a weekly series, not like Berserk. But yeah, if you're a fan of Berserk and you're looking for, you know, a more fun, lighthearted series, yeah, Magi's epic. Also play Dark Souls, it's wonderful, and Berserk is one of its biggest influences. And looking forward at its spiritual successor, Elden Ring, it seems like, yeah, we're still going that route, can't fucking wait. Rest in peace, Miura, your work was absolutely legendary. I don't think this community will ever forget you or what you did for this genre. And years and years and years down the line, I know people will still be discussing and recommending Berserk, because it's just that monumental. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts on Berserk in the comments down below, and I will see you all in the next video.